So this is a tough one, right? Because there's a video going viral where a social worker has been named and shamed for trying to remove a young child from a family. I believe they're a black family and it's a white social worker. Maybe relevant to race, I don't know. But there's a number of issues here. And I just want to encourage everyone, before you jump on the wagon, every case has its own merits, okay? We do not know what has happened in the background. We only know one side of the situation. The second thing is that the social worker is short-handed because social workers are not legally allowed to discuss the details of assessments in the public. So the social worker looks like she hasn't got a case. She's been named and shamed, and people will get upset because maybe they've had bad experiences, or culturally we don't like social workers because they remove children from families, but that's not the case. And I can tell you this from personal experience. I've done social work. I've been in social care long enough to know it's a lot of rubbish, okay? We don't just remove children from families. However, this is not disputed, and you'll check my previous posts and my podcast, you will notice that there have been cases, but they are very few and far between. What we can't do is assume that because we're seeing a parent cry, or because someone is screaming they're trying to take my child, that they are receiving an injustice. We don't know. And the only point I'm making, and I'm not saying that the parents are right or wrong. I haven't read the assessment. I don't know if I will, and maybe I will. But what we can't do is assume that there's an injustice until we've seen the assessments ourselves. Most of us will not get a copy of that assessment because it's private. It's confidential, okay? So we don't know what has happened. We don't know the backstory. We don't know the initial issue of concern. We don't know what the initial referral was. And anybody talking about the details shouldn't be doing it in public because it's not public information. All I'm saying is we don't know. And me as a social worker, I don't know. I always say, so judges do not take children away from, it's the courts that remove children from families. It's not the social workers. And it's for the police to carry it out. Okay, there are times when I believe social workers can be involved in the process, but social workers cannot walk into someone's house and take their child. It doesn't work like that. The police should have carried that out, and I think eventually they did. Those type of videos and those types of situations I hate, and any normal human would. Please don't, and I'm encouraging you to not take anyone's side until you know. And if you don't know, reserve space for learning and new information. Because if I was to just take the side of the mother, then imagine me as a social worker just listening to one side of the story and believing it. It would be wrong. And that's my point. And so anyone who's out there protesting, check the details out. From if you ever get a copy of the assessment, the mother will provide it for you. Okay, and if you are a friend, she can share that information with you if she wants. But if you're joining her side and you don't understand the overall perspective of concern, then you're in the dark. Okay, I would encourage you to not hate social workers for what they're doing. Okay, it may be that social worker just didn't do things right and the courts and misrepresented and the courts have done wrong. I don't know. And I won't find out. Maybe unless there's a serious case review, but I won't find out. But I have no doubt that, and I understand I was born in the 70s. We don't like social workers. We don't like social services because we think they're going to take our children. And I can't think of any worse distress. I've got 3 children. I can't think of any worse distress than someone taking my child. But I would encourage you to know that it is extremely difficult to have children removed in the first place. We have to do a number of assessments and they have to go to court. And unless there is imminent risk to health or life for a child, they will be removed. They can be removed immediately, or we have to go through a series of assessments and court appearances for that to happen. And judges are obliged to see if they can work with us the family, or we can work with them to make things right before we do. We don't just go straight to the top unless there's an imminent risk, and that happens all the time. It's not many. It's only 1 or 2 kids a day that are being removed from their homes. Okay. I know this is a long video, but let me encourage you to reserve judgment until you know full well. Now, imagine I have cases where I read paperwork, right? And I have a picture from what the police have said about a family, okay? Imagine if I took the police's word for it and went into the home and believed everything that the police said and didn't believe the family. That would be a problem. Or imagine if I believed the family and didn't believe what professionals have said. It's a situation, isn't it? That's why social workers will always be on the back foot with families, because we have stereotypes against us. However, I can tell you what I'm doing, and I'm helping a lot of people get things right before it gets really bad. Okay? It's tough out here, and I think becoming a social worker, I always knew that I'd be hated before I even stepped through the door. But I must say, thankfully, where I work now particularly, I've got a very, very good record. I've only had one family who's given me real challenges. Just one out of all my caseload in all this time. And I'm saying to you is that this is why I'm trying to teach social workers how to approach and work with families. Because it's tough, especially students. There's more students and newly qualified ASYE. Subscribe to my Patreon, little plug there. Subscribe to my podcast on the social work race. But listen, we don't take children from their families. We don't split them up. We don't do that. It's the courts. It's a court order. And to be fair, with or without the paperwork, it's going to happen. If the judge has said it and they haven't produced paperwork, it's going to happen. It's not the paperwork that keeps the kid in the home. It's the court order. Do you know what I'm saying? It's sad. Maybe if there was no paperwork, maybe that's an oversight, but that's beside the point. What's the background story? And, you know, when I read an assessment, or when a family reads my assessment, or other colleagues read my assessment, they get a deeper picture. This is what the family's like. This is their employment. This is the history. This is the referral. This is what mum said. This is what dad said. This is what the child said. We don't have those details, so let's reserve our judgments. That's what I'm saying. They may be right, but you don't even know if they're right. We have to be careful. Only a handful of people will know the truth. And that's what makes social working hard. Because we'll be judged from the tears of people who have lost. That's why it's hard, because people don't see, sometimes it's not all, but people don't see that we are in the middle. And a lot is on our shoulders to make a determination as to what might be best. But 33,000 social workers all working to rip families apart. That's ridiculous. You could say that about police. You could say that about firemen. You could say that about nurses. You could say that about doctors. A lot of people die at the hands of doctors every day. That's a statistical fact. A lot of people die at the hands of medication. A lot of people die in the hands of nurses. What do? We point the fingers at them and say they're evil? We're all doing the same job. We're trying to keep society safe and well. And I know that social workers have got it. We've got the knife in our back. Just as we qualify, a knife has gone in our back. Just keep an open mind. Because if some of you are judging with this family that they're right, imagine if we did that when we stepped into your homes. It's not right. And we shouldn't be doing that. Bit of a rant, but, you know, take care of yourselves, you know, and exercise due diligence before you judge, even if the person is crying their eyes out. And I tell you, to any parent who loses their child, it's a sad thing. I just want to take a moment before this timer is up. I just want to take a moment to say, any parent that loses a child, I don't know how I'd survive. Seriously. I couldn't lose my children because of my negligence or because of what any social worker says. It would finish me. So sympathies to them, sympathies to the social worker. That's an injustice against you. That is impacting because people don't know your backstory. So sympathies to everybody, but please, members of the public, reserve your judgment and always look at these things through 2 lenses and not 1. Take care of yourselves, yeah?